Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we convene our third of 5 programs on regenerative health. And today, looking at the prenatal origins of health. As we begin our program, I want to broaden the discussion that I've been initiating each day about the scope of the feminine in our culture in the face of the repression of the feminine in our culture, because I think it's very important as we honor the program this week that we take in the very complicated context in which the emphasis on human health, the importance of the maternal, the importance of natural birthing and various aspects of regenerative healing are taking place. And today I want to single out one aspect of the repression of the feminine that, particularly in the United States and in Europe, it is important for us to note. And that is the assault on DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. The assault is being articulated as a confrontation with the progressive left and the progressive forces. But if you think about it a little bit more deeply, it is part of the assault on women's sovereignty, part of the assault on gender sovereignty. And I want to just note the 3 words that are now being eliminated. The first is diversity. If you look at Mother Nature, one of the fundamental characteristics of Mother Nature is diversity. If you look at equality, one of the fundamental aspects of Mother Nature is equality and the plethora of diversity. All the species are more or less interacting the same. And the problem with the human species is we've forgotten the essential equality of nature, and we're trying to dominate it. And that probably in the end is the root cause of most of the problems that afflict us today. And then inclusion. Mother Nature, because she births diversity and holds it all equally, includes all being in the container of her womb, in the container of her love. And if you think of these qualities of Mother Nature, they're also the qualities of mothers and also good fathers. They have children, and all these children turn out differently. When Claire and I had our 2 sons, we never imagined how they were going to turn out. But the differentiation has been held equally in our love for our boys. And that's true of most parents. No matter how differentiated our children are, we love them all the same. And in fact, there's an old saying, as you know, that the parents are only as happy as their unhappiest child, because we're including the family as one. And any perturbation in the energetic is held with compassion and with love. So I just wanted to note these aspects of the feminine, the aspects of the mother as we begin today, because while birthing is intensely personal, birthing is also cultural. It's also planetary. We're in a perpetual process of birthing, of diversity, and we are called upon to honor all being as equal, ultimately, in a loving spirit of inclusion. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Humanity Rising. And in the spirit of diversity, equality, and inclusion, I want to introduce my very good friend and colleague, Stephanie Mines, who put this program together, is the founder of the Terra approach, and has probably done as much as anybody I personally know to integrate these eternal verities with the challenges of climate and the challenges of restrictive culture to bring alive to us the vitality of birth. So thank you, Stephanie, and welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's really wonderful to be with you again and to be with the incredible Humanity Rising community. And I want to reiterate the mantra that Ibu Robin Lim transmitted to us yesterday: birth triumphs over disaster. And that sums up really, I love reducing things to a sentence whenever possible. And that sums up precisely my intention here. That you have mirrored beautifully. Thank you so much, Jim. And please feel free throughout the program to lend your artful commentary. I'm very pleased to be with everyone here today. I'm very grateful to be here with everyone today. I'm not in my usual setting. Those of you who attend Tara Approach programs, climate change and consciousness programs, usually see me with my beautiful Tara behind me. And instead, I am in Illinois for a variety of reasons, including being able to be here with you in the daylight rather than the middle of the night. But I have behind me this mother and child painting by the son of my hostess here in Evanston, Lucienne Dante Lazar. And how precious it was to find a house really full of mother and child paintings. So Lucien will be exhibiting his mother and child series in an art show in Los Angeles this summer, and he very generously allowed me to use this one for our program. The title of today's program is The Prenatal Origins of Health. And I approach this really with enormous heart because I want to share with you the singular importance and the indigeneity of changing the healthcare paradigm, changing the educational paradigm, changing consciousness collectively, universally, about what prenatal life is, and bringing out of shadow the obfuscation of this aspect of everyone's biography that once claimed allows us to inhabit what I call original brilliance and what my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Cherionna Menzam-Sills, calls original embryological potential. We're going to open with Cherionna and I speaking to you about original brilliance and original embryological potential. And you can get a further exploration of that topic in the new Kindred magazine, which features the Mother of Medicine in their Mother's Day issue. But Cherionna and I are going to talk together about the prenatal origins of health and these concepts that we developed independently of each other and which we're now bringing together. And then we're going to bring in some other incredible researchers and speakers and educators and psychologists who have invested themselves in the same intention as the entire Mother of Medicine series represents. So Cherionna, would you join me, please? And I would like to start, if I may, by talking about how I came to really understand what the prenatal origins of health are. And what's important to me, and I think you know this story, Cherionna, because it's in my book, The Secret of Resilience, and I may even have told it to you when we were students together of pre and perinatal psychology in Colorado. But I came to this deeply personal understanding somatically way before I became a clinician, way before I became an author. And I was at that time the single mother of my first daughter. And I went through a personal, alchemical, transformational, utterly somatic journey, so somatic that I actually thought I was ill because of the way in which my body was behaving. And as a single mother, single mothers don't get to become ill because you always have to be available for your child. But fortunately, my daughter fell asleep, and that allowed me to surrender to what was already going on with me in the evening, which was this internal upheaval that I had no choice but to follow. So I thought I had some kind of horrible flu, but all the things that you do for a flu didn't work. And this broiling and roiling inside of me just went on and on and on until images started to come to me. And because I've always been a writer, I documented them. And what came to me in that process, and let me give a heads up here to our listeners that what I'm about to share with you can be very disturbing. So just ground yourself and find your relationship to your body and differentiate from me, because I'm telling you about something that I discovered in this process before I had a doctorate in anything, before I was a professor of anything. What I discovered was that my mother had tried to abort me. And it was an astounding experience. And there was more to it. So that was the excruciatingly painful discovery. But then there was something else, which was the reason why I had survived these actual repeated attempts, which let me footnote by saying that I later, much later, had a conversation with my mom, who just passed away. May she rest in peace at the age of 104. Just died in November. Peaceful, peaceful passing. In that conversation, my mother told me what I had already discovered. But what she didn't know about was the other part, the golden feminine link that I found in surviving that process that came to me equally in this alchemical journey, this dark night of the soul. I wrote lots of poetry during that dark night of the soul that went on for a long time. And as a single mother, when the sun rose, I made my daughter breakfast and took her to school and went to work. That's the life of a single mother. And thankfully, and I say this in the hopes of inspiring others, I wrote it all down. And in that documentation later in my studies, as my life unfolded in a way that allowed me to really learn about what I had experienced, I was able to comprehend the embryological truth, very precise physiological, embryological truth of that experience. And out of that, ultimately, came The Secret of Resilience, uh, the book that I wrote that synthesizes memoir with embryology, with case studies about the prenatal origins of health. And here I'm getting to what it is I really want to talk to you about, Cherionna. As I have pursued that path that was laid out for me, what has astounded me is how much people don't accept this, how people belittle or scoff at or look askance at, or even I, as a scientist, with the credentials that I have, people certainly, look at me as if perhaps I'm a little over the edge when I talk about things like this. So I am still exploring and trying to pierce this veil of obfuscation that seems to have been fairly successful in convincing people that they can't remember their prenatal origins, that they can't remember their prenatal life, that that wasn't that important, that it's not worth remembering. And that is not the blueprint of health. What happened to you when you were able to speak, what happened to you later in life is what shaped you, not what happened then. Or that by talking about that, you might be, casting aspersion on your mother and father or your family. So you would never want to do that, or you would avoid doing that for any number of reasons. So this has become, my dear colleague and friend, your expertise. Cherionna is the author of The Prenatal Shadow. And that's the topic I really want to talk about. Why does this shadow hang so heavily when it could, in fact, in very precise circumstances that I encounter frequently as a healthcare provider, could resolve issues that appear to be much more entrenched, much more chronic, much more intractable? The understanding of the prenatal origins of health could, in fact, bring wholeness in situations that are excruciatingly painful and apparently unresolvable. Why is there so much resistance to understanding that period?
Mm. Great introduction. And actually, listening to you, Stephanie, I realized I wanted to speak a little bit about my own history and how I came to what I've been coming to, and I'm still coming to. I feel like I'm still learning. Um, and it goes back to, well, of course, it goes back to the womb, but I'll just go back to, for now, when I was 24, and I was a folk dance fanatic doing folk dances from all over the world, um, at least 5 evenings a week. And to make a long story short, I had a concussion doing at a folk dance
Hmm.
workshop. And um, I wasn't knocked out, but I was dazed from like it was like I was totally paralyzed. And I was present. And there was a doctor in our group. This was at a workshop. And see, I'd been an occupational therapist working in neurology, so I knew what was going on. But she came over and asked me what my name was, because that's what you do. I knew my name, but I could not for the life of me get my body to work. I couldn't get anything to connect. And I don't know how long that was, maybe a minute. It felt like years. Um, and finally, with much effort, I managed to get my name out. And then I started to laugh because it was such a relief. And then the whole room started to laugh, because we were all relieved. And the I was not in shape to dance after that, so they guided me over to some mats that were on the side of the room. I don't know if I've ever told you this story,
You
Steph.
haven't. You haven't.
So they lay me down on this mat, so because I was in the middle of the floor, they wanted the floor to dance on, and I needed to rest. And as I was lying there, I turned my head and saw that on the mat next to me there was a newborn baby.
Hmm.
And her parents, had come to dance and they were keeping an eye on her there. And I look back at that moment, it was so symbolic because that was really a second birth in my life. We're birthing all the time. But what happened from that, it totally turned my life around. It took about a year to start to do that clearly. Because what I was finding is that I was having problems with memory and balance and finding words. And that was still going on a year later. So I went to a neurologist and had some tests, and um, he did a CAT scan. And, I remember meeting with him after the CAT scan and him saying that what he saw in my brain wasn't what you'd see after a concussion. It's what you'd see with a deteriorative neurological disease like MS, multiple sclerosis, and because it was all over my brain.
Wow.
And I had been working with people with MS and had often thought that's the last thing I'd want to get because there's no cure for it, right? And it's, it is debilitating and quite miserable to have. So I remember leaving, he wanted to do a spinal tap, which is the way they diagnose that. But I also knew that a spinal tap is a very painful, invasive procedure. And I remember leaving his office and wandering around the neighborhood in a daze. And I, I was 24. I didn't know about such things at the time, but I feel like I was guided, like something told me, don't go back to him, focus on health. And that set me off on a new path. Because up to that point, if something was wrong with me, I followed my family's pattern. It was like, oh my God, there's something terribly wrong. I have to go to a doctor and I have to get fixed, right? Or, suffer with it. And what happened was I found myself being guided to various holistic forms of healing work, changing my diet, and I won't go into all the details. But it eventually led me to having and then studying body work. And through the body work, I started to have memories emerging of some quite traumatic things that had happened to me when I was young. I don't think it went to birth and prenatal right away, but those started to come in. And then I had a body work practice, and I think it was within a week, I had two different men come to me for a session who birthed themselves off my massage table. And they were big men. I'm like, I remember I'm not very tall, but a little over 5 feet. They were at least 6 feet tall. And somehow these big guys, started inching off the table into my hands. And we both perceived me as the midwife, and I received them. We both knew what was going on. And it wasn't like I was trying to get that to happen. They weren't trying to get that to happen. It was just there. And they needed to be born in that moment. And somehow I knew how to receive them and support that. And it was shortly after that that I found myself at Naropa Institute, now university, studying somatic dance movement psychotherapy, where pre and perinatal psychology was introduced. And also I met William Emerson, which is how you and I met. And something in me went, this is it. I need to study this. And having never planned to, go to graduate school at all, I then felt I had to do a PhD in pre and perinatal psychology, which I believe, and I think I knew that was for my own healing. So a lot of what happened in that process was as I was, having these in the healing process, having memories come up that were quite unpleasant, a lot of trauma. I had a pretty horrible beginning. Is that initially I was pulled into those.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
that was also my training. That's our cultural way of looking at things, which I think is speaking to what you're asking. Is it Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher, wrote a poem, which I can't remember exactly, but it was something like, they don't post the good news, they only post the bad news. And it's true, you look at a newspaper, you know, it's mostly bad news. It's hard to find any good news, right? It takes programs like this to find good news, find ways to find the space between all the catastrophes that are happening for the birth to
Hmm.
prevail, right? But it's there. And what I started to experience was that there was something bigger than these traumas that had happened to me. And partly I was guided in that when I arrived at biodynamic craniosacral therapy, which evolved from osteopathy, where one of the principles is to orient to the health with a capital H and intelligence with a capital I, that are always there. And, patients or clients will come to us with all their problems and expect us to fix the problem. In biodynamic, we're not looking at the problem so much. We acknowledge it's there and we hold it within the whole.
Hmm.
And the whole includes much more health than it does problem. And it knows how to heal itself. There's an intelligence there. And then I found myself with Emily Conrad, my dear mentor, who developed Continuum, which is I consider it a somatic mindfulness movement practice. And what I experienced, because I had been teaching, starting at your studio actually, embodying embryology through a different kind of somatic work. Where it was really fun and we played out things and, it was a great way to learn. But what happened in Continuum was I realized pretty quickly that we had that embryological fluid intelligence within us. And it was really easy to drop into that it's always there. And so that's become my main practice. And it really influenced me. Biodynamics and Continuum together helped me to have more of a focus on the health, on what you call our original brilliance. And I think influenced by Emily and her work, came to our original embryological potential, because that potential is so there. And I find, I can just allow myself to move in a fluid way and I start to feel it. It's different from the everyday doing this, where we can be quite uncomfortable trying to meet a very sped up, overwhelming cultural world. We're not designed for it. So why is our health in shadow? I think it's because of fear. I think, there are two major ways to orient. And one is to fear and separation. I mentioned the other day these in relation to the masculine, separating things out, trying to control them all, which comes from fear. And fear involves separation. If I'm separate from something, I don't understand it. So I try to control it, or I'm afraid of it. I try to stay away from it. But in the feminine, it's more connected. It's about relationship, wholeness, and all the answers are there, right? That's about love. Love is about wholeness and connectedness. So love can include fear, but fear doesn't include love, right? So as the feminine and the love are making themselves known, and I think they are coming more out of shadow now. The masculine tries to suppress them, which it's been doing for a long time. But I think the feminine is, I'm seeing it as some waves coming up, going, eventually the rocks are worn down, right? They come back to something more spacious and more fluid, which relates to our original potential.
I think in what you're saying, Cherionna, you're actually getting to what I suspect. I don't have evidence for it. As a scientist, of course, I always look for the evidence. But the evidence is difficult to find as data, for instance. What you're getting to in your story, and that comes organically out of my story, is that if we incorporate the truth about prenatal life and birth, and I posit that what is popularly accepted and practiced in the medical profession, largely, with exceptions, is a lie about prenatal life and birth. It's a falsehood. There's a false story, a false practice regarding addressing prenatal life, addressing the health care of prenatal life and birth. It's oriented by a falsity. It's oriented by a misrepresentation and a lie. And the truth, which is what we have so passionately sought so many avenues to express, writing books, teaching, studying, that we've invested ourselves in. Even as the young women, we were approaching it so gleefully and eagerly, is wholeness. And in that wholeness, there is highly individuated empowerment, and not an amorphous empowerment, but a very specific understanding of selfhood and purpose. And that's, of course, what I call original brilliance, which is a parallel, a companion, just as we are parallels and companions to your original embryological potential. And both of us have invested ourselves in our creativity in developing mediums by which other people can perhaps somewhat more easily, without having a concussion, without feeling like they're horribly ill and agonizing for hours and hours and hours under duress, could come to that original nature, that original whole nature. And I realize, as we have this conversation, which I'm so pleased to be having with you, that those listening who unfortunately we cannot see, if you want to talk further with us about this topic, which is my favorite topic, you can join us in the after chat if you would like to talk with us, and we can see you. We would love that. But we can't see you right now. We can't see your responses. And I know Cherionna and I are the same in that as teachers, we respond very much to how our students are responding to us. So we can read the room in this deeply sensitive way and make nuanced alterations in how we are proceeding based on the window of tolerance that we assess in the fields. It's pretty difficult to do that when we can't see who's watching and listening. But given my experience, and I know you would agree with this, Cherionna, I would venture that as we speak about investigating prenatal life, as we speak about this as the origin, the blueprint of health. So the background to perhaps painful, troubling patterns that people have in their physical bodies, in their relational bodies, in their emotional, spiritual experiences. When we suggest this, this puts people, some people, who may not have considered that before or who have suspected that, into, at the best, probably a state of confusion, at the worst, a state of panic.
Mm.
So I'd actually like to pause
Mm.
and invite you now to offer out of what you've developed. Yesterday, I offered something that I've developed, also somatic, that came to me also in this process, like guardian angels coming to us with tools. So I came to the art of compassion, Jinshin, that I have incorporated into the TAR approach with its subtle hands-on applications. I shared the mother flow yesterday. And you came to biodynamic cranial therapy and continuum, both of which you teach. So I wonder if you might share one of those somatic resources that have helped you to settle, to organize yourself, to come into the awakening that is everyone's birthright. This is really what Cherionna and I live for, I would say, to a certain extent, is other people having the remarkable experience of owning their original brilliance, their original embryological potential through the somatic revelation of it. But it's a rocky road. You might discover things that are really painful, as I did. But once I discovered it, I want you to know, everyone listening, it was a painful discovery. And it was painful to have it validated, but it actually has completely liberated me because it put everything into context and allowed me to transform patterns of trauma that 20 more years of therapy probably wouldn't have touched upon. I mean, literally everything came into coherence. And that's what we want for those who we invite into this process. But that would not have evolved so exquisitely, so spiritually, if I didn't have somatic resources. So I want others to have those resources. But would you be willing to share one of those with our audience so that they can proceed today and perhaps for the rest of their lives, knowing that they can anchor even as they encounter overwhelming experience?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I just feel to say that, I mentioned my encounter with MS. I even have some of the story on my website, to inspire people. Because as far as I know, I don't have MS, and maybe I did. I don't know. Maybe I do have it, but I don't experience it. And what I do experience and have experienced more and more through healing work around the traumas is more life energy, more aliveness, more presence, more compassion, more peace, all of that. And so, what I'd like to offer is actually a follow-up, kind of building on what we did with you yesterday, Stephanie, using continuum and quite a simple thing. And just say part of the practice of continuum is to orient to what feels good, not all the aches and pains. And if trauma comes up, it's not about focusing on that. But there's also going to be something that at least feels okay, if not good. And for most of us, that's a major paradigm shift, and it takes practice. And we were taught, in our modern Judeo-Christian world, you're not supposed to feel good, right? That is, evil. So we need to unlearn that, in my opinion, in my experience. I had to unlearn that. This part of my identity was to be ill, to not feel totally well.
Mm, mm.
And
Well, that's an important statement there. Yeah.
So, yeah, my mission is to shine the light on the shadow, shine the light of awareness on shadow so that we can become more aware. And that includes being aware of our prenatal experience, which includes our prenatal health and intelligence and potential. So, what I suggest we do. First of
I'm going
all,
to go off screen and just let you be the one who shows this so that I actually can do it and be private about it as you lead us.
I'll know you're there.
I'll come back.
Good. So in continuum, we use different kinds of breath and vocal sounding that we direct into the tissues of the body, and movement. And what I'd like to do today is use a breath that we use often in continuum that's very soothing. I just changed my sound here so you can hear it. It's an intention in continuum generally to breathe in through the nose because it's a more settling kind of breath. It supports the parasympathetic nervous system. So breathing in through the nose. And then on the out breath, so as if you were soothing a little child. So it's different from going, shut up. It's very soft, very gentle. And look what happens to my lips and my cheeks when I do it. I'll turn sideways so you can see it. Right, so you should feel a little pull on your cheeks as you're doing it. Emily Conrad, who had been a model as well as a dancer and a visionary, a somatic visionary, talked about smooch lips. Right, so you can offer those smooch lips to yourself, to your tissues. And what I'd like to suggest that we do is actually maybe starting here, similar to what we did yesterday. So a hand on the occiput, the back of the head, and a hand over the heart center, the center of the chest. And doing a few, I'll just show you first, doing a few shus there. And then moving to the other hold, one of the other holds we did. With hands here, and doing a few shus here. And then I'll have something else to add to it. So I'd like to invite you to join me, first of all, in just taking a moment to feel your body, whatever is present for you of body. And that may include a sense of ground, how your body meets the support of Mama Earth under us. So I like to think of her as always being there, holding us in her lap. And to what extent can we rest into that support under us? So we might be able to be more aware of that by sensing into our feet, where they're making contact, our legs, our seat, whatever we're making contact with that's under us. And just being curious about the quality of that contact. Does it feel like there's a sense of resting, melting, softening into that support? Or is there a sense of hardening, resisting, pulling up and away from it? And there's no judgment about any of that. This is what we call in continuum a baseline, our starting point. I think of it as gathering our initial data, like in an scientific experiment, and then we do some continuum, and then we come back and check how it's changed. So it probably will. And I notice I'm taking a breath. I invite you to also be aware of your breath, the other important component of our baseline. It's being curious what your sense is of breath just now, where you sense it. If you consider that the breath provides oxygen to every cell in the body and carries away waste products from every cell in the body, there may be a sense of sensing the breath more subtly. And then I invite you to bring in that breath, the holds in the breath. And so putting a hand on the occiput and a hand in the center of your chest. And if you can, breathing in through your nose and just allowing the sh breath to come out gently with your out breath. Allowing it to go as long as it's comfortable without any effort. We don't want to be efforting in continuum. And then doing another 2 or 3 breaths like that. You might be curious as you do this what you sense in your body. Is there any response? You may find yourself starting to slow down a bit. And then, when you finish the one that you're on, moving your hands to your upper arms. It's like giving yourself a gentle hug and doing some more shiz there. Really taking your time, allowing this to be restful, nourishing, nurturing. And you might consider that we all have a little one that we were within us. Maybe you want to hold that little one and offer the breath to them. And then when you finish with the sh that you're on, taking a little time to explore what we call micro movements in continuum. That's like making little tiny movements. You could start with some fingers, movements that could be so small that someone watching might not even see them. I'm making them big enough so you can see, but they could be smaller than that. And to me, with our fluid body, it's like if you were to put a finger into a little bowl of water and move it ever so slightly, there'd be ripples coming out. And so we want to listen for the rippling when we make these tiny movements. You can make tiny little movements anywhere in your body. It doesn't have to be just fingers. You can move it down, go up your arms to your wrists, your elbows, shoulders. Maybe your toes want to move. Maybe there's some response in your body. You might, if you're looking at me, you might see that my body's starting to move in a very fluidic way. To just listening, allowing what feels good. And if you like the sh breath and it feels supportive, you could do a bit more while you're doing this. How much of the whole of your body can be involved with this? And just take another minute or so to be with this. And of course, feel free to continue for the rest of your life, or as well as longer than another minute or so. But as we move toward completion for this bit of instruction, I'd like to invite you to take a moment to come back to your baseline and check in with your ground, how your body rests into the support of Mama Earth now. You might find that it's a bit softer in those places of contact. You've sunk down a bit more. You might find your breath is a bit slower, fuller, easier, deeper. Maybe you feel it in more places. You might feel it in your face also. I noticed in the chat there was a question about why we purse the lips like that. And what I found is that doing that, that's something that Emily included in that breath. But what I find is that it wakes up the social nervous system that Stephen Porges named from um, the ventral vagus nerve and all of the cranial nerves that are involved with the face and with all the things we need to be social beings and what little ones need and mothers need in order to bond and attach with each other, including being able to smell the breath, to suck and swallow, all of that, and to see each other. So when we stimulate part of that system, it can support that system. So pulling on the face in that way can stimulate our social engagement nervous system, which can support us in being more socially engaged, being in a state which is the only state where we're able to accurately perceive safety in present time. It's associated with the window of tolerance that Stephanie mentioned. So that can be very helpful, especially in challenging times. So as we're coming back together, I'll mention one other thing, because I saw also in the chat someone comparing micro movements to unwinding and craniosacral work. And I think from micro movements, you could have unwinding start. That fluid movement is a little bit like unwinding from how I learned it many years ago. But it's also got other qualities. I recommend not trying to compare continuum to anything, because it's got so much uniqueness to it. And you'll miss it if you're trying to make it like something else. One of the practices in continuum is to orient to what's unfamiliar, what isn't pattern.
I love that.
Yeah. And that also takes us out of cultural, collective, known shadow. So yeah. Stephanie, how was your taste of continuum?
Oh, it was lovely. I relished it. I feel the softening around my mouth.
Mm.
And I really appreciate how what we're doing here right now is so many things simultaneously, but primarily a representation of the mother of medicine, how healing happens, how wholeness is found, how it incorporates slowing down and embracing the fluidity and the intelligence of prenatal life, how the mother of medicine is always oriented towards the wholeness. And you can hear in what Cherionna and I are both saying that even though we can't see you, we are feeling you, we are reaching out to you. And that is the nature of the entire Mother of Medicine intention, this series, the summit in November, really everything that both Cherionna and I do. I feel, please, Cherionna, I am including you because we are so included. We've seen so many ways in which the movements that you've been doing in your part of the world and the movements I've been doing in my part of the world without us communicating about them are mirrors of each other.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead.
I just want to mention something about continuum and how it relates directly, in my opinion, to the original embryological potential, is that what we find is that when we do it, we become more fluid. Our tissues literally become more fluid. And so where we've been holding and densified in various patterns in our tissues, in our nervous system, including in our thinking and our perception, that melts, that dissolves. We come back to the wholeness, to the fluid whole that we were as an embryo, and all the potential that the embryo has to form itself. And we reform. We can reform in a different context. And that's such a gift.
So this gets to what I want to convey, this statement that I made on the first day of this series, that the obfuscation, the shadow that has been cast that you address so helpfully in terms of bringing people out of that shadow is a power grab. That what comes out of the exploration of one's reclamation of their earliest biography is this empowering, expansive confidence and being with self, the honoring of one's unique purpose, not just as a phrase, but highly specifically. my discovery of my original brilliance is quite detailed. The mission is quite specific. And it comes out of my first exploration that I shared with you that had so much pain in it, but which led to liberation. So that power grab is an attempt to squelch
Yeah, control.
and control the quality of that. And so then the next question, and here I want to bring the rest of our group together onto the screen. I want to illuminate that shadow like you. I'm a light bringer. What's the best way to do it? I'm trying to do it here in this trailblazer. I'm trying to do it in the summit. I'm trying to do it in every book that I write, in every poem that I write, in every chat that I type into. And that's part of why I'm not reading the chat, so that I can focus on doing it and keep it all in one place. How do we meet this challenge? So please, I would invite our other team members, Antonella Sansone, Julie Gerland, and I hope Robert Bitter has been able to arrive from Thailand. Please come on screen. And I'd also like to invite Courtney Graham, my companion on this path, who has been answering the chat for me, who's been supporting this. Well, she supports all my work so eloquently and artistically. She makes all the graphics, all the beautiful handouts that we deliver to people are almost all of them are designed by Courtney. So you're a brilliant graphic artist and a wonderful healer, a Tara practitioner, and the mother of a beautiful year-old girl, Coralie, who's been attending all these programs and who's now sweetly asleep on her lap, of course. Oh, Courtney's commentary, I welcome in. It looks like Robert hasn't arrived yet. Oh, that's too bad. We have he'll come. We'll bring him in whenever he can be here, perhaps in the subsequent days. Dr. Robert Bitter is an OBGYN who is opening birthing centers similar to what Ibu Robin has done in her Bumi Sehats. He is doing that in Thailand and elsewhere. So, Antonella, Julie, Courtney, please continue this conversation about what I'm calling a power grab, this obfuscation, the prenatal shadow that Cherionna addresses so succinctly, actually, in her book. And let me mention that Cherionna and Antonella are on the faculty of Regenerative Health for a Climate Changing World, which is an MA PhD program through Ubiquity University. It's flourishing and only started 2 years ago, and we already have our first graduate with another one in the queue, and you'll be meeting that person tomorrow in our incredible program on motherhood as a rite of passage to the mother of medicine. But I want everyone to know that Cherionna is offering a course through that MA PhD program about the prenatal shadow. So for those of you who are really tantalized by all of this, just know that you can proceed further, because we can't do as much as we would like in this short time. So I'd love to hear from you, Julie. Your voice is new on our Trailblazer program. Please meet Julie Gerland. She is the founder of Birthing, co-founder, I should say, of Birthing the New Humanity, and also an educator on prenatal communications beginning even before conception. So please, I'd love to hear your voice from all your
Absolutely.
experience.
Cherionna, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Well, I thank you. I just wanted to mention that the course sorry, I can't talk anymore. Well, that continue. The course that Stephanie mentioned has already started, but people can still join. We're almost going into the second class, which is next week. So, I encourage people to join sooner rather than later if they're going to.
Yes, thank you. And I have a new course starting about accessing prenatal memory. If you want to go on that journey for yourself, that starts in June. And both of those are taught with credit, if you wish it, towards an MA or PhD in regenerative health.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie.
Fantastic. So I would like to just bring in the balance here, which we have talked about already. We talked about original brilliance, and we've talked about the shadow. So what I see here is really the two sides of the coin. And it's in my experience in 44 years in this field that people are afraid to go into something that hurts. And so they don't want instinctively, because we brought up the question just now of why people resist this information. And it's simply because it hurts. So if we can bring to the world, and this is what we've done through the United Nations and through all the advocacy work that I've done in 44 years, the idea that this unconditional love that we all seek, we need, we feel it inside somewhere in our soul, we know that this love exists and we long for it. And so if we give people that approach, that there is a place where we can get it, there is a place where that exists, and we can merge with that. We could call it the Great Mother, who's inside us, who's in every single one of our cells, with that unconditional love. Then it's like anybody going on a trek up a mountain, or yes, there will be difficulties. You know, the prodigal son returning, all these different mythologies that we've had handed down over the ages has a sense. It's the hero's journey. How are we going to face these difficulties inside ourselves, but with the goal in mind? And the goal is to connect with that original brilliance. That's Stephanie's way of putting it. I call it unconditional love. We can call it the Great Mother, whatever works for each one of us. But that this love and light, innate intelligence exists in everything. And so it gives people that I've worked with some beautiful goal, instead of just saying, well, you know, there is the shadow and it's difficult and we have these pains, and they think, well, why should I go in there? And of course, in my work, I've had a lot of resistance from people. And this is something that I found cuts through that everybody wants to go back to that original place where we're whole, which is where we come from actually before we incarnate. We all know that. So we need to waken up that spark inside ourselves. And then that gives the courage to go through the onion layers that we've received from the moment of conception, the inheritance from our parents, from society, from the world, the toxins, everything that has been loaded on to us that creates this feeling of being alone, being cut off, being isolated, being not loved, and which leads to all the disease, mental and physical, that humanity is suffering.
So I think it would be good here for us to define some terms, because the shadow, as I understand it, the prenatal shadow, and please, Cherionna, I'm saying this with an invitation to correct me. So I'm sharing really my understanding of the prenatal shadow, which is associated with the power grab that I'm speaking of. The prenatal shadow is not necessarily something people experience as pain or suffering. People, in the majority, have accepted the prenatal shadow. And I would say the prenatal shadow is an obfuscation. It is a misinterpretation, perhaps deliberate. In some cases, we could say it's quite deliberate to control an organic. It's a colonizing effort that's been extremely successful as a way to shape healthcare, as a way to shape the birthing process in its entirety. So it's an obfuscating effort that is culturally induced and sustained financially, politically, socially, and that people are comfortable with it for the most part. They're quite comfortable with it. Is that close? It's not the entire prenatal shadow, but it's an aspect of it.
Well, I actually don't see that as the shadow. I see that as an expression of shadow.
Yeah, say more, please.
The term shadow, as I use it in the book, The Prenatal Shadow, comes from Carl Jung. And the idea is that it's what has been unaccepted or perceived as unaccepted. So it gets pushed back into our unconscious. And usually we think of that as bad qualities. You know, it's like I'm not supposed to be angry, so I push that back and I don't have anger, right? But then what happens with the anger is it wants attention. It wants to be loved. It wants to come back to wholeness and unconditional love, as you mentioned, Julie. And it's also there for a reason, right? Anger is about, you think about mama bears, anger is about protection, our boundaries. It's valuable, but it's culturally unaccepted, right? So it gets pushed into shadow. So it tries to act out. It tries to get our attention. So I think what you're referring to, Stephanie, is the acting out of shadow. And the prenatal shadow that I see is that little ones have incredible awareness and sensitivity and sentience and intelligence and potential. And generally, they're seeing as, in obstetrics, they call it the product of the birth. I just find that I can't stand that. They are they're people, they're not a product. It's not an industrial production here, which is what the masculine tries to make birth, right? But there are people, there are beings there, and even before conception, as you look at Julie, there's an awareness there, and that is not acknowledged, right? So when that comes out as memories, and we do have early memories, the fantasy, I want to say the lie, to follow your language, Stephanie, the lie that we don't have memories before we can speak is based on a misunderstanding, and sometimes an intentional misunderstanding, that only verbal, explicit memory is memory and valuable, because that's all the masculine sees as valuable, right?
Okay.
But we have implicit memory that's in our bodies, our cells, our tissues, our behaviors, our attitudes, our beliefs, our relationships. Those are all expressing early memories, including prenatal memory. And I'll say one more thing, and I'll let other people speak, which is that I like to explain that to the people who go, well, that's ridiculous, is that cells have memory. Cells are aware and responsive to their environment. And we can see that in the immune system, which has been very popular the last, what was it, 5 years now, 4 years? We wouldn't be here without an immune system. Immune cells that are capable of recognizing threat and then making changes, developing receptor sites for the threat, so that next time it comes along, they remember and that they can respond to that. Cells in a culture, like in a petri dish, if a scientist puts a toxin into the culture, the cells withdraw, they contract, right? They're sensitive and they're intelligent. That's an intelligent response. And the cell that is a sperm and an egg, or the unicellular organism that arrives when they come together, is also responding in that way. So embryos, long before they have a nervous system, are responding to their environment, and they remember on a cellular level.
I love this. And it's also the mother of medicine that we explore and collaborate on our understandings. And I love this exploration of what is the shadow, what is original brilliance, what is the object of the mother of medicine, what is the object of all medicine, what is the object of all healthcare, and how can women such as those of us in this room on the screen right now, who are all in various forms healthcare providers, how can we embody the mother of medicine and illuminate this shadow, no matter how you define it, illuminate it so that in the educational systems globally, in the healthcare systems globally, there is a waking up to the reclamation of this birthright of original brilliance, which we can also call wholeness, which we can also call selfhood. Courtney, as a young mother, looking at how will your child develop in this world? What will your child's future be like in this world where there is currently, dominantly, a prenatal shadow? What's your understanding of how you can orient and help your own child to claim her original brilliance? Help yourself to continue on your path of claiming your original brilliance despite this prenatal shadow.
Thank you for asking. I've been contemplating this every day, and there's a general theme of slowing down. You know, the world is encouraging us to speed up, go faster, be on technology. And I've been looking to people who have homeschooled or Waldorf students and teachers of looking to how to educate by being more in nature and being allowed to be in their bodies and move rather than being taught to just sit in one place and be quiet. And it's brought up a lot of grief for me too, of how I can see like the way that I was essentially trained uh, as a child, and still like emerging into my voice, especially like speaking up, or "Oh, I don't want to interrupt. I need to be a good girl." And how can I not bring this into my daughter's way of being, and also not feeling affected by other people's fears and what they think needs to be done, and trusting my own intuition. And so these practices for me are like helping me trust myself, so then I can use my intuition and how to teach her. Um, there's so many influences out there. And so I also don't want to be overburdening and protective. It's like, let her be in the world. So doing it out of a place of love and joy rather than fear, and not like a spiritual bypassing love that I know we talk about a lot, Stephanie, but in like a trust and a faith in her and in our relationship as we move through the world, and to like cultivate our creativity and expression.
Beautiful. You are completely building a bridge to tomorrow's program, which is about motherhood as a rite of passage. And that's what you're showing us, is that motherhood is a rite of passage, and that motherhood itself, and I'm speaking now to all the young mothers who I hope are listening, and if you're not listening, I hope you'll see the recording. that it is possible to bring light into that shadow through the way that you mother and how you mother yourself. And that's the topic for tomorrow. We'll have a wonderful group with Dr. Ali Davis, who is one of the leading voices in matrescence and who has developed the mother tree method to help mothers reconnect with nature so that nature is the mother of medicine for them and for their children. That's a direct route, I think, to lessening the burden of the prenatal shadow. And Antonella.
Oh, it's really, it's just like so much, reflection and observation. And from my own experience as a mother, my experience with the indigenous and the society nowadays. And what's happening now is that, bringing up your children, respecting this original brilliance and with so much nurture. And then these children have to, deal with so much shadow. It's just an example, yesterday I was mentioning when I was in labor with Giselle and my first pregnancy, and I had a wonderful pregnancy. I wrote a book, which hasn't been published because when I submitted my manuscript to the publisher, that was Giselle is turning 20. It's a manuscript this thick. And the baby, I let the baby speak in first person. So she was writing in first person. And the publisher, a couple of publishers said, oh, it's too much out there.
What a great idea, Antonella. I don't
Oh,
think
yeah, I mean, I can show you.
I don't think you told me about this book before. I would love it.
Yes, I have. I
Okay.
have emails in our exchanges. I said that
I'll go back and look at
I
it.
changed 3-4 titles. The last title is The Embodied Relationship, the emerging of a baby's experience and awareness, a consciousness from before birth. I documented because I always loved writing since I was a child. And I wanted to document somatically what I was experiencing during my first pregnancy. I could do it because I didn't need to go out and work. I didn't want to. I had a husband who supported me, honor, and having been brought up in Africa in contact with the wildlife and animal working in the safari. So he was very attuned to the mammalian world, the mammalian nature, etc., Mother Nature. So what happened is that I was having, imagine, every day writing about my somatic experience and Giselle's behavior, movement, how she responding to my touch, how she anticipated my touch, almost like requesting it. I mean, it's something that I haven't read. Please, if you find the book, and I always wonder why there is nothing written by a pregnant mother about their experience.
So if I may say so, Antonella, you are sparking something really important. And actually, we have talked about it. So Cherionna and Antonella and I have been communicating with each other for what, over a year, I think, at this point. It
Yes.
feels like a solid amount of time, sharing
Yes.
our ideas, unfortunately unable to meet in person. But one of the things, do you remember, that we've talked about along these lines is, as an outcome of what we intend, is women sharing their birth stories.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about, Antonella.
Yes.
And this is a way, if we can actively support this and promote this,
Yes.
this is a way to illuminate that shadow.
But that's why I created this program which actually I piloted in my PhD because I found an intelligent university because no one, I mean, I tried in the UK. Oh, no, you can't be the researcher and the creator of the program. It's all about bureaucracy, about the rules, While I found this private university, private, free mindset, who actually saw long-sighted and saw the value. So I piloted this program on 30 women, and for them, just the realization, which is in the DNA, is not a discovery. We think that we are doing something extraordinary. Indigenous women have known all what we are talking for thousands of years. So when the women realized this was a recalling, it's always that the baby is a sentient being capable to develop a relationship and responding to the mother emotion. A woman, I remember, I mean, it's in the article I published on the qualitative study where there are all the reports and the birth stories. I send it to you. Obviously, you are very busy to read it. But what it was, I developed some, obviously, there were themes that came out from these reports. And actually, the most interesting thing was that one woman, I remember, said, I talk to the baby now all the time. When I drive, my husband, thought I was mad, but now he started playing with the baby. This simple realization that this baby is not an agglomerate of cells, just developing, growing, but is a human being with feelings, emotion, it's extraordinary. I mean, these women, but it's not that they don't know, it's they forgot because of the shadow, because of this, colonization, etc. Just an example. I had this wonderful pregnancy, and then I had this wonderful labor, and then they found a little bit of meconium when I was 9 centimeters dilated, and they put me on the monitoring machine because I was walking, fluidity, okay? So I was walking back and forth, breathing, enjoying, going through the pain, physiological pain of contraction. They moved me from home, midwife led at the St. Thomas's Hospital in London, because of this tiny quantity of meconium, fear, okay? And they moved me to the medical center. The obstetrician came. If you don't deliver in 1.5 hours, we have to intervene, shadow. I see it like the shadow. Yes, so something beautiful, light, the shadow come. And an inner voice inside me, the motherhood, voice said, you are not going to intervene. But they tied me to the machine. So the fluid, the continuum was interrupted. So what happened, the baby felt that and remained, stuck. The contractions were not that powerful. And fortunately, my inner voice was so strong that in the end, after probably 20 minutes, 1 hour, 20 minutes, I gave birth. But the obstetrician was already the shadow. And Giselle, for the first years of her life, reacted to the talking dolls, the talking dolls, that metallic voice, with a sort of panic attack. And now a child well-nourished, and we couldn't understand the beginning. It was after, some time that I linked it to and I brought her to awareness. And as I brought her to awareness, because, children, the younger they are, the closer they are to their womb life. So we used to talk all the time about her womb life. And tomorrow I will read what she wrote. In the letter she wrote me for Mother's Day. She's going to be 20. How the exposure to music, it makes me shiver just to read from her experience, the link to the monitoring machine, how it stayed with her, that sound, which is, it's a huge experience for a child, that the metallic, imagine these premature babies, their experience with metal. So for me, the shadow is everywhere. You can see in many, but the mother bring the light and the powerful voice. So only mothers. I'm not, and when I say mother, I don't mean mothers who had a physiological birth, because I mean I see Cherionna, I see a motherhood, a motherly instinct that I wouldn't see many mothers with children. So when I say motherhood, we have in DNA this mothering instinct. And then you can transpose it in your work, as a healthcare practitioner, with, helping, babies coming to the world in many ways, artistic work in many. So when I say mothers have a powerful voice, and we need to defeat the shadow.
Yes,
To
mothers have a powerful voice, I think is a beautiful way to speak about the mother of medicine, because we intend to invite, and I apologize if I haven't read all of the iterations that you've sent me, Antonella. What we want to call, this is very important to me because I feel that the way that we write, the writing that we deliver, is one of our most powerful instruments of this loving voice of the mother that is quite detailed, quite specific. So the globalization of the understanding of love, I think, needs its detail. It needs its detail in order to become much more cross-cultural, much more integrative, and as inclusive, to use the words that Jim was introducing.
but
So
also
we need to sum up, Antonella, because we're coming to the end of our
it
time.
needs depth.
Yes, that's it.
Depth,
Yes,
because
thank you.
now there is the opposite, nothing deep. But how can motherhood lack depth?
You're
I mean,
absolutely right. Yes, I completely agree. And here I feel like you're getting into the writing issue, which I love to talk about. Uh, how do we communicate this depth?
mm,
You're absolutely right, Antonella. How do we communicate that depth simply,
mm,
inclusively, cross-culturally, in
yeah,
our language? And this is why I'm not involved any longer much. I kind of have a love of it, but in academia.
yeah,
Why am I
absolutely, absolutely.
really doing this? I mean, I actually am, while I'm in Illinois, I am actually doing some professional conferences. That's another reason why I'm here. But this is my preferred space. My
Yes, and
preferred space is where we simplify things. We don't contribute to the shadow by making things much more complicated than they are. So we need to wrap up.
yes,
So
yeah,
I'll shut my own mouth here and invite everyone to the after chat, which is a way to continue the conversation. The link is in the chat, which I have not been watching, which I rely on Courtney to monitor for me, or I can't focus the way that I do. And I want to end by inviting everyone to make some closing comments to this, I find, very stimulating and heartwarming conversation. Shall we start with you, Julie?
Yes, I think it's really important for everybody who's listening to understand that our health, whatever age we are, actually is rooted in our prenatal time.
Yes.
And it doesn't start when we're in our mother's arms. By the time we're born, everything is in place. Of course, it's immature and it's going to grow, but our nervous system, our brain, our organs are with us for life. So this is why this is so important, that everybody should know that. If you're 50 years old and you have a heart condition, where is the origin? Back in the prenatal time. So this, I think, for the future of medicine, both in prevention, but also in cure, is go back to that time when you were in the womb, what happened when your heart was being developed. So this is a whole area of work that needs to be developed. And the other one, just very quickly, is the consciousness which is in our cells. We are not the mothers. Mothers are in us.
Mm.
This
So
painting is exactly in this painting.
we are part of the great mother who is love and who is intelligence and is living and working through us. This construct that we get that says we are a individual cut off human being that is from this country or like this or like that is a construct. And so we must go back to recognizing that this intelligence is and always has been and always will be the mother. And one thing that I can leave everybody with, and we teach this to our students, is that when your body gives you a message, just give me one message that your body can give you during the day. Somebody, just one message.
A headache.
Pardon?
A headache.
A headache, yes. It could be pain. It could be, I'm thirsty. It could be, I need to go to the bathroom. What is this? This is the mother within us, working to keep us healthy. Because if we don't do what it's asking us to do, we will get sick and die. So this intelligence is speaking to us, is guiding us 24/7. How cool is that? Everybody. So my suggestion is that when you have a message, it's not just a signal, it's your mother inside. Listen to that message and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And do it. Do it with
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie.
Yes.
Yes.
And in the animal world, this is much easier. This is what happened, but we developed overstructured, complex overstructure. So we struggle listening to our body, to Mother Nature, to the basic needs. And when you see the indigenous people, that they are so attuned to each other, especially the babies, they pick up from the body cues that the baby needs a wee. They just pick up the baby and they put the baby on the ground. I don't know. Their sensory communication system is very, very powerful. They're not intellectualized. So that's why you wouldn't see a baby having a tantrum, a child having a tantrum, or baby cry, because they don't need to escalate into cry, because their body cues are, just as they understand the time from looking at the sun, so they are tuned to Mother Nature. We ask one of the member of the community to wake us up. We were sleeping in a tent in their village at 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock, they don't have watches, and it was outside. So they are so attuned to Mother Nature. So they are tuned during pregnancy, to the unborn baby. Even before conception, they're already connected. So what you said is absolutely, it's, that's where the dysfunction is actually, in this listening to the basic needs that started from pregnancy, and everything is in place to nourish health.
Beautiful. Thank you, Antonella. Courtney, some summary comments here on how we bring forward this mother of medicine understanding of the prenatal origins of health. And particularly, I would say, as Julie has articulated, in the healthcare realm, which is the particular purview of the Regenerative Health program, and my particular purview. I'm doing my best, Julie, to do exactly what you're describing with everyone who I am in service to, that in every case, and Courtney knows this because she participates in my programs, going back to the prenatal origins of whatever health concerns they have. How we build this movement. This is what really impassions me and gets me up in the morning to how do we build this movement? How do we give it more expansiveness, more embracing of more people in humanity so that the shadow doesn't hang over the majority of the world. And you've already given us through your motherhood, which is the topic for tomorrow. Do you want to add anything to that, Courtney?
Yes, it comes to mind to reiterate what you, Stephanie, and what Cherionna brought up through her attunement is orienting to the capital H health, our original embryonic potential, our original brilliance. And Antonella, what you and what Julie, you're saying is listening to the mother within us. Like this wisdom is within us. And if we tune into it, we amplify it. And so much of modern medicine is based in fear and searching for what's wrong. And so when we look for the health, there's just so much flourishing that happens there. So I'll just say that.
That's wonderful. And I do want to say, because I've had this experience several times, I just had it last night when I had to take a patient to hospital and work with the medical team there. And I've had this experience recently more than once, the power of integrative medicine, that I was respected in my perceptions and my recommendations, and I respected what the allopathic physicians were doing. I just want to say that this is happening and this is possible. And it's beautiful when it happens because that allopathic perspective is also needed. It plays an extremely important role, particularly in acute situations, which was the one I was dealing with last night, and that I have dealt with before. That what allopathy contributes is remarkable. It's just not all the time that it's the best approach. But when it's integrated with my holistic design, with respect, which I have to say, I get that respect in the hospitals with the medical people I'm interacting with, that is a greater wholeness, even than just with these other approaches that may not quite be doing it when the situation has exacerbated. And Cherionna, we'll conclude with you, the author of The Prenatal Shadow, the book on this topic of today.
I keep hearing the word hologram, and it started when I heard you speaking, Julie. You know, I love that the mother is inside us, but she's also all around us. And, you know, nature, but also cosmos, fields. I think of this was a biodynamic concept, fields within fields within fields of support, because we sense those energetic fields supporting us. And I come back to if we want to support health for babies, for mothers, for families, for our planet, we need to provide support. And that support to me includes respect. It's not like telling people how they should do things, but providing the deep listening of the feminine and a holding field. In biodynamics, we talk about a safe relational holding field where the intelligence can emerge, the health can emerge. You know, the person or whatever we're holding doesn't have to be contracted in fear. It can rest and be and receive and perceive and receive the support that's available. And perhaps that's the mother, you know.
You've defined it exquisitely, Cherionna, just now.
Thank you. So that needs to come out of shadow.
Yes. Beautiful. I have enjoyed this so very much. What has become a women's circle. I would have loved if Robert had joined us. I hope he will still be able to join us. What a joy and nourishment for me to be part of this circle of women who share my vision. And this too is the mother of medicine, that it is collaborative, that we're never alone, as Julie has reiterated, and to experience it and to thrive with it and to let it fill us up. That is also birth. That is a birth. So please, everyone listening, everyone participating, please join us in becoming the mother of medicine. Join us in illuminating that shadow. Allow Cherionna to write a new book that's not about the shadow. It's about what happens after the shadow. We'll see you all in the chat room. Jim can't join us. He had another assignment. We'll see you tomorrow. Motherhood as a rite of passage to the mother of medicine. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie and Cherionna and Antonella for this amazing summit.
Thank you, Julie, for
Yeah,
being
thank you, Julie, also. And Courtney.
here.
And Coralie.
And
Yes,
Courtney.
of course, of course. Oh, oh, it's amazing. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Akoli. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're such an asset here.
Courtney, you have to end the program.
Well, here we go.
I know.
Bye.
Bye.
See you in the after chat.
Yes.